welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, Professor Adamolekun, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor David Awurawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, who is still on his way to the studio, Professor at the University of Lagos, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, Yemi, Professor Akinterinwa, you listen to our two guests. First, Chief Robert Clark, SAN, commenting on the presidential and National Assembly elections. And then Chief Johnson Chukwu, setting an economic agenda for the next president of Nigeria. What should be those areas of priorities? Let me start with you, Yemi Adamolekun.
Well, I think one of the things I liked about how he explained the issue of Abuja was he basically said if a presidential candidate wins in 36 states and he then doesn't win in the FCT, you've basically given the FCT veto power over the will of the whole country, which obviously doesn't make any sense. Because the argument was that we're talking 24 plus 1, where 1 is the FCT, or we're talking 25% of, or 2/3 of 37 states. So I thought that was a very easy way to think about it, that in terms of equitable ways to think about it. And then you had asked him about the lawyers going to court and then withdrawing. And I love the way he answered that obviously it's not their money. It's why attorney generals of 6 states or 7 states will decide to go to Supreme Court on an election matter where there are clear guidelines and regulations around who listens to election matters. It's been a very interesting week as well in terms of just looking at our judiciary. The Supreme Court came down on their own judgment around Naira, which, first of all, they dragged for so long unnecessarily. Then they gave this judgment, and there's been silence. Silence from the CBN, unless I missed it. Silence from the CBN, silence from the Attorney General, silence from the presidency. I thought I saw a report where Godwin Emefiele said he had started burning the 500 and 1,000 naira notes that were recalled, and they only had 200 naira left, which was why 200 naira was allowed to return into the banks. So the question then is, if he's already burnt 500 and 1,000 naira notes, and the 200 naira notes are back in the bank, what does the Supreme Court judgment really mean? And again, the Supreme Court is also under scrutiny given the outcome of the elections. Well, that's true. This is the show after elections. All right. Given the elections, the outcome of the elections, there are judgments on Akpabio and Lawan, where it's kind of funny if you say that the Supreme Court judgment is illegal, because the Supreme Court is the highest body in the land. But per the Electoral Act, their judgments were illegal. So if the Supreme Court has started this election season with illegal judgments, I'm quite worried around what the presidential and National Assembly cases would look like. But I do agree certainly with Labour and the PDP in going to court around the elections. Simply because, not to say who won or didn't win, but the process was just not credible. So at the end of the day, you need to look at it again so that whoever is then determined to be the winner of that election has the legitimacy or the backing of the fact that it was scrutinized. Because at a very fundamental level, the challenges of collating polling unit results at the ward, local government, and state level was not scrutinized. So by the time it got to Abuja, my sense is that the chairman just decided that, you know what, if I decide to scrutinize all these things, we will still be here for another 1 week. So let's just declare a winner and let them all go to court. I mean, it sounds tongue-in-cheek, but for me, given the scale of alterations that people are showing that happened and the different things that happened at different polling units, different state levels, that seems to be like the only thing that makes sense. Now, INEC is saying that, yes, there were logistic issues, yes, their technology was compromised, but again, unfortunately, INEC hasn't fully owned its own part of this challenge. Yes, our politicians played their part, but INEC as the election management body, at the end of the day, the buck stops at its table. So to the degree that part of it are challenges within your system, own it and apologize to Nigerians around your failings. To the degree that you can point to other stakeholders and the role that they play, do so. But from February 25th, when people started talking about these failings, INEC has literally pretended like it's deaf and dumb and has chosen not to engage on the issues, which is really very unfortunate.
Well, just to clarify something, the Supreme Court cannot give an illegal judgment. The apex court, anybody that is not happy with the ruling of the Supreme Court, your only recourse is to God.
No, but the law is clear.
And that does not mean...
Akpabio and Lawan did not participate in primaries where they were given tickets for. But Dr. Abati, you can state your opinion, but I am clear about what I said. The law is very clear that you cannot be a candidate of primaries you did not participate in. So if the Supreme Court now decides, it's like the same Supreme Court that decided that Buduzima, who was number 4, is suddenly a governor of a state. And let's be very clear. It's your opinion, Dr. Abati, and you're entitled to it. But Yemi maintains
it will be a long shot, though, to assume that their lordships do not know the law.
No, it's not. No. It's not. Now, the issue is, and it's never been the challenge with our judiciary, that they don't know the law. The issue is what they choose to do with the law and how they play with the law. I mean, I understand your position, but also let's be very clear, because what you're then saying is implying that every judgment given by the Supreme Court is above board. And I'm saying that that's not true.
No, the same Supreme Court says that it's not as if it's infallible. But it's the final court.
I'm not disputing that, which is why I said that. So if we agree that the Supreme Court is infallible, then it can give an illegal judgment. I rest my case.
Anyway,
you see, Yemi, you cannot be more correct.
Thank you, my dear Prof.
You see, the issue is that everybody knows the law. When I say everybody, I mean the lawyers, the learned, the judges. But how do you know the law? This question is pertinent. If not, when you have a court, a jury of 2, 3, 4, 5 people, you have dissenting opinions exactly. Which means that you have different approaches to the understanding of a given law. So while you are correct, well, we cannot set aside the position of Dr. Abati.
PhD in law, I mean.
Well, he's working towards that. You see, I like our elder statesman, Robert Clark, at 85. By the grace of God Almighty, he will live longer than he even expects, healthily, and he will be rich enough. I disagree with him on his giving advice to political parties, non-gratis. You see, if he looks at the issue from a biblical perspective, why did God even say, my people perish with their knowledge?
For lack of knowledge.
No, I'm coming. The Bible says for lack of knowledge. Yes, because I want to put the argument now that we have a Robert Clark who has knowledge and is already 85. If he does not begin to impart, to give this knowledge, then that particular very good knowledge, indispensable knowledge, will have been thrown into the burial ground in the foreseeable future. I'm not saying that he should not be paid, actually. But you see, it is not the political parties that need the particular knowledge he's keeping to himself. If he has answered Ruben's question, I, as a professional student, I would have learned. For instance, I'm very happy when he's talking about what happened, at 21, when we have all these cases in the past. The issue of 12 1/3, which Richard Akinjide argued during Shehu Shagari, which is now repeating itself. You see, from that one, my appeal to him is that, please, before he answers God's call, he should not deny we professional students of of his wealth.
He said he's happy to do public opinion. It's the way Dr. Abati framed the question. Dr. Abati said, what advice would you give to the 3 parties or the 2 parties that have gone to court? So I think it was the way it was framed. If maybe I had asked him the question a different way,
that's the very best way the question should have been put. Because when you talk about an advice, that reminds me of this controversy between a special advisor and a special assistant. Please, you see, when you are a special assistant, you comply. You carry out, you execute your principal's mandate. Advisor, you give it. If it is acceptable, fine. If it is not, they throw it to the garbage of history. Now, advice in this case, he is an elder statesman, you know, a senior advocate of Nigeria with rich experiences. He's been there for long. Now, we need to tap from his knowledge. And in this case, whether he's giving it as an advice or as a lecture, as whatever, I am only saying that it is not the political party that needs his knowledge. Okay?
We agree. We just said the way it was framed. You just answered the question the way it was framed.
Well, in any case, on the issue of 12, 1/3, 2/3.
2/3.
I know. you see, we need to be putting all this discussion in context. For instance, they are saying that Abuja FCT should not be considered as a special case. And I listened to Dr. Abati during the week when he raised the issue of whether Abuja should be treated, you know, the and conjunctively or disjunctively. When he raised the question in the during the morning show, I listened to that, and I'm saying that whether anybody wants to address it conjunctively or disjunctively, it is the same outcome the both will have. For instance, and conjunctively means that you must have 2/3. All right? And if you say you are not looking at it conjunctively, but you are still required to have 2/3 in Abuja, please, the bottom line remains the way Robert Clark had put it, to say we have 37 states. Abuja is a territory. All others, they call them states. But the mere fact that constitutionally you are supposed to have 2/3 of the votes there, accredited votes, then it now means that having 2/3 of 37 cannot easily exist. The way Richard Akinjide interpreted it in the past was that, okay, they will now find 2/3 of Abuja on its own. That's what they did in the past. You have the 12, then that.
Done it in the past. Which I didn't.
Yes, that was in during Shehu Shagari.
1979. Awolowo versus Shagari.
Yes.
That's the
So
case.
that was what happened. They now try to find the number of votes and then take 2/3 of that. That was how he interpreted that, in order to just find a solution. But essentially, I like his call for constitutional reform. We need to link this one to what Johnson Shuku said. When he said that we can have a good way if we do the things correctly, we can have good elections, successful elections. But I ask the question, is it really possible in Nigeria of today, and most likely Nigeria of tomorrow, to do anything rightly when the system itself is intrinsically entrenched in institutional corruption? It's not possible. And that's what our father, Robert Clark, drew attention to by saying that the Constitution itself is the bane of the society. Is there. Now, the example he gave, for instance, we are talking about freedom, we are talking about democracy, but you are also compelling the individual citizens of Nigeria to be a member of a political party before you can think of contesting to be whatever. And now he also raised the issue of corruption in the context that the way you know, corruption has been defined by the ICPC, by the EFCC. I look at it differently to say any form of dishonesty is necessarily an expression, an act of corruption. Our political governance is never predicated on honesty of purpose. When we were here the other time and I said that, look, I think that the APC government has the agenda, has the capacity or the potential to rig election. We didn't believe, we didn't take it seriously, etc. along, because I was trying to say that the governor of Akwa Ibom by that time came to the open to say, look, this is the agenda. But it's not a fait accompli. When a government, when a leader already has the intention to rig an election, then how can you be talking about doing what is right when the person who is supposed to do what is right already has a frame of mind that is crookedly corrupt? So this is the bottom line. Now Johnson Shuku talked about tax evasion, that it should be seriously sanctioned. I agree with him. The bitter truth in Nigeria is that it is only the public service, public servants, civil servants that readily pay tax. But the government itself has not been doing much to ensure that the generality of the people of Nigeria pay tax. I think we should subscribe to the idea that, like Ruben Abati put it, to say, let us expand the revenue base. It is necessary. Revenue also, we should focus on that. And on the issue of philosophy of the political leaders, because he's trying to suggest that in an answer to the question of manifestos raised by Dr. Abati, he's saying that we should focus more on the philosophy of the leader rather than on the manifesto. I do not share that particular policy. As a matter of fact, they have to go hand in hand. They have to go pari passu. The philosophy of the leader in itself can be in conflict with what is expressed in the manifesto. Now, but when a leader has a good philosophy, well-intentioned, very honest, it will be very easy to address, for instance, the whatever is put in the manifesto. The manifesto is basically supposed to be an instrument for the people of Nigeria, the voter, to assess, to evaluate, to criticize, to bring the leader to account in the future. But his philosophy in itself can be different. At the end of the day, what we mean by the philosophy of the leader in this particular case? He told us that Peter Obi, Atiku, and Tinubu, that they are all free market oriented people, and that they are not likely, no, they say they are most likely to move away from that. True. But the issue is that the environmental conditionings of this free market question will determine, and not the individual.
Prof, let's make progress. Yemi, you were going to say something to
I was just going to say,
Prof made.
Yeah, two things. One, the points about political parties that Richard Clark said, an independent candidacy.
Robert Clark, sorry.
Robert Clark said an independent candidacy. That's one part of it. And then the other part, which I believe scaled the constitutional amendments, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall, but it was part of the constitutional amendments. I'm not sure if it scaled.
It didn't fly.
It didn't, there we go, okay. But the other bit about it in terms of rejigging our constitution is the fact that you can have the requirements for political parties, but they don't need to be national parties. I might want to serve my constituency at a state House of Assembly level. I don't need to join a party that has offices in 36 states.
As was once the case in the same country, Ibadan People's Party, Utuedo in Benin,
right.
And
there you go.
There were parties
exactly,
like that.
which I guess aligns with Mr. Clark's point about our constitution. And then secondly, he made the point around fuel. I agree with him that the economic hardship that preceded the election probably affected voter turnout. But just to clarify that on election day, there's no movement. So the issue of people needing money to go and vote, I'm not quite sure that will have had an impact, because there will have been no transportation in the sense that you are paying for to take you to go and vote. So just to note that, since we have another election coming up.
No, but in this case, it's not just transportation. I think he was just giving a general idea.
No,
if you don't have food
Prof,
in
that's
your...
what I just said. I said the economic hardship leading up to the election, yes. But on election, because he made the point about election day.
Yes, on election day, if you don't have food in your stomach, you won't go there.
But there was no transportation.
Exactly. So an issue of
day.
needing money to move was my point in clarifying that's a non-starter.
Anyway, thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Yemi Adamolekun. Let's take our next subject. Aggrieved parents of Whitney Adeniran, the 12-year-old pupil of Christland International School here in Lagos, who recently died in strange circumstances during the school's inter-house sports activities, have disclosed that their daughter died of electrocution, according to an autopsy report. Whitney's mother, Blessing, confirmed this during a live Instagram broadcast on Wednesday last week. In her words, the autopsy result is out, and Desola was electrocuted. My daughter died of electrocution. I've been subjected to trauma for the past 2 weeks. Really sad, really sad, really sad. No parent should lose a child, whatever may be the circumstances. Yes, the coroner's office says autopsy indicates electrocution, but still, autopsy will not, revive the dead. So what lessons can we learn from this in terms of management of processes by schools? Yemi, let me start with you.
Two things for me. One is that Lagos needs to take the issue of Christland very seriously as a school. And not to pick on Christland by any stretch of the imagination, but it is important if the same school gets involved in different scandals year after year. That's number one. Number two, the school was very clear, was very confident in their posturing that there was nothing untoward, the child was fine, and one, that the child was fine, there was nothing untoward that happened, number one. Number two, then they got into a back and forth with the father because they didn't want an autopsy, but they were saying that it was the father that didn't want an autopsy. And the father said, why would I not want an autopsy? It's actually illegal for me not to want an autopsy for my child. And if I'm looking for answers, why would I not want one? So I think that the narrative from the school, the way the school managed the situation, how you can have an inter-house sport away from your school and not have an ambulance, not have any medics. There are just so many points of failure on the part of Christland. And I think Lagos State really should. Obviously, the initial, we shut the school down, then we do investigation, then we open the school back up. They need to take this a bit more seriously, because this is not the first nor second time that Christland has been in the eye of the storm. And for the family of Whitney, I think it's important. Yes, you're right. The autopsy doesn't bring the child back, but the autopsy does answer questions. And this is why in Lagos, and I think it's one good thing that Lagos has, or one of the good things, that Lagos has, is the fact that autopsies are mandatory. Some families still choose not to do it. Unfortunately, there are limited medical staff that can even carry those autopsies out, which makes it a strain on the system. But this is the reason why it's important. People die, and it's important to know why they died. So it's not your village person that's chasing you or somebody that looked at you wrong. There are explainable reasons why things happen. And it's not only useful to know for the person that died, but if it's something that's genetic or hereditary, it'll be important for family members to know what the cause of death is. It's condolences to the family, and I do hope that Christland takes responsibility for their role in Whitney's death.
Well, Prof,
you see,
parent, teacher, educator.
Whenever I talk about political governance in Nigeria not being predicated on honesty of purpose, this is another one. Now, we are so dishonest a society. Christland made the whole world to believe that, look, the victim was sick. 2-3 weeks before, the victim had XYZ, she was treated, and someone came to the school to take her away and things like that. So the idea that there will have been anything near electrocution, they try to change, polish public opinion. Now autopsy has confirmed the fears of the parents that, look, actually she died of electrocution. Why is it difficult for the management of the Chrisland school to admit that we had this problem? We deeply regret. If it is our fault, yes, fine. Let God forgive you. But why do you have to deny? This is the issue. When we cannot predicate public administration, school administration on simple honesty, now there's a problem there. You ask the question, what lessons? The first question is, because this is not the first time, Yemi rightly pointed out the previous scandal in which the school has been involved. Not only the school, there are many. But whenever we have incidents like this, what is it that the government of Lagos State has done to prevent recurrence? Now there's electrocution. Where is this wire line staying, where you now have electric ions, all those things passing through, and someone will now have to step on it or touch it? So this is where we are. If the government is up to its task, they must ensure that there is an officer, inspector. We used to have school inspectors in the olden days. They must go to every school to ensure that the electrical system there, water system, everything, they are running very well. There is no risk. But when they don't do that, only to wait until there are problems before they will now begin to think. I will continue to say this thing, that we must move away from thinking after events. We must think deeply before. When you put a school in place, for instance, you must ensure that things are working. You must anticipate, eventualities. This is how I think that we can do away on a permanent basis all these incidences. I pray to God again. In recent times I've been compelled to ask God to bless Nigeria, to help Nigeria. God should comfort the parents. The child is irreplaceable, but we must still die.
Okay,
May God be with the victim.
Just to present, a fuller picture. Someone just sent to me now a statement by Chrisland, dated March 5. And it says, it's titled, Chrisland has no plans to exhume witness body, reiterates regret over loss. That's the title of the statement. Because, there was a story out there that the school is insisting that the body be exhumed and a second autopsy to be conducted. So they say, the school says, we hereby vehemently refute the claim making the rounds that Chrisland School intends to exhume witness body. We have no such plan and assure the public that we are also parents in mourning and will not do or subscribe to anything that paints such insensitive optics that prevents our dear daughter from resting. We assure you all that no such thing will happen. Rather than do this, plans are underway to immortalize witness name so she can remain indelible in our consciousness. This is without prejudice to the ongoing coroner inquest, but it is an honor we owe her. Then the school goes further to say, as an organization, Chrisland School expresses its total trust in the investigation process, which was why the school authority insisted on the coroner inquest in the first place, to help clear every doubt against insinuations of a cover-up, and to provide us with learning curves to guard against future occurrences, not only to Chrisland students, but also other young ones out there that may be recreating in public facilities. Notwithstanding the above, we shall continue to cooperate and submit to due diligence till the coroner inquest runs its full course, which will accord our beloved Whitney, our family, and indeed ourselves a closure. We owe Whitney the dignity and our sincere and unreserved demonstration of respect. Thank you. Chrisland Schools Management, signed.
It's a very welcome development. It's very good, it's very timely, it's well written, and the mere fact now that they are showing affection, we are relations. I am a father to that particular victim. My bitterness, the sadness has been mitigated to a great extent that, okay, they are now saying that they feel the same way we are feeling here. And we can only appeal to the original parents to say, to take it kindly. God in his infinite mercy will do whatever is necessary to sustain the parents, the brothers, sisters, the victim left behind.
Well, thank you very much, Prof. We'll take a short break now on this Live Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing fears of xenophobia in Tunisia in the wake of President Kais Saied's inflammatory comments. Don't go away. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this Live Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I see have with me Professor Bola Akinterinwa and Yemi Adamolekun of Enough is Enough. Very quickly, let's go to Tunisia. Hundreds of West African migrants departed Tunisia on repatriation flights on Saturday amid fears of a wave of violence since President Kais Saied delivered a controversial tirade last month. In his February 21 speech, Saied ordered officials to take urgent measures to tackle irregular migration, claiming without evidence that a criminal plot was underway to change Tunisia's demographic makeup. Saied charged that migrants were behind most crimes in the North African country, fueling a spate of sackings, evictions, and physical attacks against the community. The African Union has expressed deep shock and concern at the form and substance of Saied's remarks, while governments in sub-Saharan Africa scrambled to organize the repatriation of hundreds of nationals who flocked to their embassies for help. Well, Professor Akinterinwa, let me come straight to you. This is about international relations. What do we do? What can the African Union do to sitting presidents who refuse to obey the principle articulated in the responsibility to protect? Because R2P does not apply only to your citizens. It applies to everybody in the country. Your observation.
Well, if I begin with the issue of IR2P, you know, that principle, as initiated by Canada and adopted by the UN General Assembly, identified crimes against humanity, you know, genocide as elements before that can be applied. It simply means that if an incumbent government is not able to protect the people, the citizens, whether you are foreigners there, then the international community owes it a responsibility to intervene and ensure that the society, the people are well protected. But the issue in Tunisia is a little bit different. One major reason that prompted the intervention of the African Union itself is that they are saying that immigrants, whether legal or illegal, they are increasingly settling down in Tunisia. The number, they put it at 21,000. And they are now saying that the presence of these immigrants, they call them sub-Saharan Africans. Sub-Saharan Africans. Note that one. And in this particular case, that they are now trying to denation their own identity, their self-preservation, that the Arab character of Tunisia is being removed. In other words, Tunisia is trying to say that it's more of an Arab country than an African country. That was why in my column 2 weeks ago, I said there is the need to redefine the concept, the notion of Africa, in such a way that we should be talking about either Black Africa as Africa. There is the need to just do away with the Maghrebi Union. And if they will be part of Africa, then we should now put, Africa to imply Africa of sub-Saharan people. This is necessary because about a month ago, mistreatment of foreigners, Black Africans in Morocco. Now, the Maghrebi Union, North Africa, is a region of its own, but I have said in the morning they are African country, in the afternoon they are Arab country, in the evening it depends on the issue at stake that will determine
reality, as you
said.
said.
The situational reality. And I'm saying that, look, because efforts are being made internationally to ensure that a country like Egypt is considered for a position of permanent membership of the UN Security Council, meaning now that they will want Nigeria and South Africa to contest for the to compete for the other seat. Now, Tunisia is simply hiding under the pretense that foreigners are responsible for their problems, the way the European Union will hold Africans responsible. So in this case, please, what can the African Union do? Please, I beg all African leaders and you, Ruben Abati, look
as
at what
leader.
Yes, an African leader. Robert Clark refer to him as a special elite. All right, here. So
of which Mr. Clark is not one.
Well, please, James Ngugi said in Wit Not Shy.
Ngugi Wationgo.
Yes, he changed his name to Wationgo. Now, he said a white man is always a white man, but a black man is never a black man. We are black people, black Africans. Let us be black Africans and be proud of it. And by so doing, we can make progress.
The major challenge in Tunisia, of course, then, is racism, is xenophobia. It's condemnable, and that the president of the country is the one inciting his own people, not just against blacks from sub-Saharan Africa, also against black Tunisians, who constitute about 10% of the population of Tunisia. So it's racism simpliciter. Now, this weekend, March 11, there will be another general elections. Last Sunday, I asked a question about expectations. Yemi Adamolekun, what are your expectations?
Okay, well, a couple of things. One, INEC, as I said earlier, still hasn't quite told us what happened. So I hope within the next 1 week, they do tell us what happened and what is going to happen differently, that we have different elections. I do hope the stakes are higher. I mean, take a state like Lagos, for example, where the president-elect lost. I expect a lot, not even expect, we already see it. The incumbent is campaigning harder. People are reaching out, people are calling, members of the party are doing door-to-door. But a couple of things, and I'll say, well, for time, specific states have specific issues that you can see even from the presidential elections. So Rivers is one, Kano is another, and then Lagos. And I'll focus on Lagos for time. Lagos is playing with a very dangerous tone with ethnic baiting. The candidate of the Labour Party is half Igbo, and he's married to an Igbo lady. And we've turned this whole narrative around Lagos being hostile to Igbos, Igbos not welcome, and his heritage now being a subject of conversation. Might I remind members of the APC that Mr. Bola Tinubu is married to a Shekiri lady, and his son, Sheyi, is married to a Lebanese lady. And so if we want to talk about who people are married to as the legitimacy to be Lagosians is a challenge. Mr. Tinubu himself is not from Lagos. And neither is the current governor. And I'm saying this particularly because if we're not careful, we're all in this Lagos together. And if we're not careful how we frame these conversations, it will affect all of us on election day. Sorry. And I might also add, for APC that wants to make Igbos their challenge, let's not forget some of the things that have happened under this administration that are part of what people are reacting to. We've had NSAS, we've had forced evictions, we've had impounded cars that were auctioned off. So there are enough reasons for people to be upset. But I raise that because we need to be mindful. And again, for security agencies, for states like, again, Lagos, Rivers, Kano, where presidential elections show flashpoints, that we need to be prepared for that. And lastly, for INEC, from lessons learned on logistics, members of your staff and uploading or not uploading, how they're doing polling unit results, let it be possible for people to vote and have their votes count. Thank you.
Well, Professor Akinterinwa, are you going to vote on Saturday, March 11, or you will stay at home with
Like
Amala and
Mr.
Begiri, like Chief Robert Clark?
I will take instruction from God Almighty. He will direct me as usual.
Hallelujah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Professor Akinterinwa. Thank you very much, Yemi Adamolekun. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.